On behalf of Inclusion Press, Jack and Kathy and me, we want to welcome you to the very first of the Learning Marketplace sessions of the virtual Toronto Summer Institute. On November 12th, we had the third virtual Toronto Summer Institute and an Ideas That Matter session. And Patti Scott, Kim Brown, Sandi Cooper, and Diamond Harges shared an idea that mattered. They had a 7-minute opportunity to describe it and then a 20-minute breakout session. And they have generously agreed to host this very first inaugural Learning Marketplace session that we opened up not only to people who were part of November 12th, but to anyone who was interested. And so we're very glad to see all of you here.
Thank you. It's nice to see everyone. Diamond and I are doing the opening together, so I'm going to dive in without him as a starting point. We thought we'd take 6 minutes and split people into random groups of 3, and we'd like you, with everybody having, a good 2 minutes to share, to introduce yourselves to 2 other people and just share what called you to be here today. What made you decide to join us today?
We've got everybody back.
Okay, that sounds wonderful.
And you have Diamond.
Oh, thank you. That's great. I can't see him, but I'm glad to know. I'm glad to know you're here. Welcome, Diamond. I am going to start by giving a little, hopefully, context to what's going to happen for the rest of the afternoon. And we'll see how that goes. As an organization, Kim and Sandi and myself and some of the other people you'll meet today were involved with an organization called Neighbours Inc. We've been around for 20 years now. No, 25 years now. I don't like to think I'm that old, but I am. And our work from the beginning has been focused on supporting people really with 3 basic things. And I'm going to share just 3 slides to talk about this little bit that I want to talk about here. And those 3 things are supporting people, to have in their life their people, the people that they care about, the people that they love, people who work with them and for them and who support them. But the most important thing to us is that everyone we work for has people in their life that will travel through life with them and real deep and meaningful relationships. And we want to support people to find their place. And by place, we mean, as I was just chatting a bit with Jan about, a home that's theirs and a place that is their place to be and to live, but also their place in community. The places where they're welcome, the places where they belong, the places where they make a contribution, the places where their gifts are noted and recognized. And finally, we wanted to support people to find their purpose. What is it they want to bring to the world? Why do they get out of bed in the morning? What is their life all about? And we thought if we could help people do this, we started the organization back in 1995. And if we could help people do this, we could help people have a life. And our interest was never in providing services so much. Services is a vehicle. The interest is in supporting people to have a life. And I think over the years, we did that really well sometimes, and sometimes we struggled. And one of the things that's been an ongoing challenge is making sure that we remain connected to that mission. And we set things up to help us stay connected to the mission. Things like we weren't going to have any offices, which meant that we'd be hanging out in neighborhoods and communities where people lived. We'd be helping people interview potential staff in Starbucks or Dunkin' Donuts or wherever they like to get their coffee. We'd be part of the neighborhoods and communities where people lived. But and that stuff has always been helpful and useful. But over time, what we found is that we would come across more and more challenges in helping us stay focused and connected to the heart of our work. And in fact, in New Jersey, and many of my colleagues and friends from New Jersey are on this call, in New Jersey in the past 10 years or so, there's been a massive systems change that has taken what was a nice sized bunch of documentation and system crap we all had to do and turned it into this massive size amount of systems crap and documentation that we need to do. And it became harder and harder to stay focused where we wanted to be focused. So somewhere about 7 or 8 years ago, we started looking at how do we keep rejuvenating our culture and keep our culture on track and keep us centered and grounded in the things that we think are important. And one of the things we did was we had a meeting. We had 2 meetings actually on March 31st and April 1st. And the first one was in my living room and also Dave's living room, who's on the call because we're married. And there was maybe 7 or 8 or 9 people who came, and it wasn't necessarily people involved in our work. We just invited people to come together and talk about what's important to them about community. And we had a second conversation the next day in a larger space and talked about that some more. And this picture is a picture of the second conversation. And with us for this was Diamond Harges, who has been my partner in this piece of our work over the past 6 or 7 years. And Diamond did some really interesting stuff, finding gifts in people's neighborhoods and within the people who lived in the neighborhood. And there was a name attached to it called Roving Listening. And he shared what he was doing, and we talked about what we wanted to do. And it wasn't even so much what we wanted to do, but what we wanted to get back in touch with as we were getting pulled away. And there's actually probably some people on this call now who were there for that original conversation. And out of that conversation came some of what we came up with as guiding principles. And some of them were connected to Diamond's guiding principles, and some of them were our own guiding principles that we came up with. And Diamond, feel free to jump in and interrupt me at any time with anything you want to share to this. But one of the things we thought is we wanted to really invest in the people that Neighbours works for and the people that work in the organization. And by invest, what we meant was put our time and our money and our energy and our resources into things that we think are important. Because we always say what we think is important, but we don't always spend our time and our resources on what we think is important. And we decided that we would invite everybody to come together for what we were going to call community conversations, because titles are not my big thing. So we're coming together to talk about community. We said, okay, we'll make it community conversations. We would invite anybody who Neighbours works for or who works in Neighbours, and they were welcome to come. But it was an invitation and it wasn't going to be mandatory. It's something you come if you want to come. And if you come, your time gets paid for. So even though it's not directly related to your work, we're going to figure out how to pay for your time and value your time. We made a decision that we were going to meet only in community spaces. We were not going to meet in anything that had anything to do with the system, not offices, not not any of those spaces that we would sometimes borrow that had anything at all to do with the system. We made a decision we weren't going to discuss anything that had to do with the systems part of our work. So no matter what was on people's minds, when you walked through that door, we were only going to talk about community, about our own communities, about what was important to us around community, about the gifts that we could find in in our communities and the communities that we worked in. We were going to do stuff together. And so we did a bunch of different things together. These community conversations were some of them, and where we would come together and have these conversations regularly. But we also did stuff like learning journeys. We traveled into Harlem and took a look at some innovative community work that was happening there. We went down to, as a group, and interestingly, the day we went to Harlem was a day when there was some massive accident on the George Washington Bridge, which is how you get to Harlem from New Jersey. So we spent about half of that day sitting in a traffic backup on the George Washington Bridge, but we had a wonderful rest of the day. We went to Trenton, where a pastor that Diamond knew was doing really awesome work with youth who were marginalized. And he took us around Trenton to different groups and activities he was doing, and just learned from what he was doing. We did some of Diamond's roving listening in a neighborhood in Passaic, New Jersey. We met in an apartment complex there, which was what would be called the projects, and we met in their community space. We were able to get into it, and then we wandered around the neighborhood there and talked to people and just got to see who was there. And I'll never forget this experience. I wandered with Chrissy, who's on this call and whose face I can actually see right now. But Chrissy and I, in our wandering, tried to talk to people, and no one would talk to us. And we were essentially the only white women wandering around the neighborhood. And finally, a couple of guys told us that they thought we were undercover cops trying to learn things about them that they didn't want to share, but we kept trying to talk to people. So we tried that idea of the roving listening. We did other activities like this picture that you can see here, which is a church in the town of Passaic. And it's a Black church. And a couple of the people who work with Neighbors are the pastors of that church. And they had moved their church into a Latino community, and they were trying to figure out how the church could be of service to the community. So we did a series of meetings and hanging out in that community center and walking the neighborhoods and meeting people in the town. And then the church hosted a day where they invited different people from around the town, and they were singing, there was dancing, some young people performed. They got food from some of the wonderful restaurants that was served at lunchtime, and there was a facilitated conversation between people from the church, people from the neighborhood. There were some town council people that we wore down, and they showed up after several visits. And the conversation was on how can this church be of service to your community? And they came away with, at the end of that final day, with a bunch of ideas about how the church and the community could work together. None of this had anything to do with anybody's job, but all of it was really about helping us, all of us, myself and the people who work in Neighbors, to feel to kind of feel what it was like to be connected to the community again, because we were in a space in life where we weren't really feeling that. And it really helped to set the culture again, or to reset the culture after a period of, almost 20 years or so. The other two guiding principles we had is that we were going to capture the stories. So we'd have pictures like this. And Jen Brown, who's on this call, I believe took this beautiful picture. So credit to our photographer. And we would capture the stories and we'd share the stories. And the other kind of guiding principle is that we'd prototype, that all of us would try new things and see what worked. And it didn't have to be in the neighborhoods that we worked in. It could be in our own neighborhoods, but we needed to try things, see what we learned, bring the stories back, and keep trying things and keep learning from it. And I think that's part of what helped to create that culture. And the other piece that was kind of behind this that I think was helpful with the culture is that we really, when I said we want to invest in the people who work here, we really wanted to do that. And because we have a belief that if the people who are doing the work can bring their whole self into the job, their interests, their passions, the things they get excited about, things that have nothing to do with our work, that our work will be better and stronger because of it. And that the people themselves, the people who work here, and people like myself, will be better and stronger individuals because of it. So we really wanted to invest in that and support people to follow their own passions, no matter where those passions might lead. And we did stuff like giving people small grants to try things out and to do things. So this went well for a while, about 3.5 years, and we did all kinds of stuff. And we met every couple of months, and several, like I said, several of the people on the calls were part of this, on this call were part of this. And then we reached a point about 3 years ago where the system changes in New Jersey had just gotten so strong and so intense that we really felt like we were stuck for some of the people we were working for. That we had a pretty good culture, but despite the culture, some of the people that we worked for were really struggling to support them to have a life that was meaningful and that made sense, and where they were actually, they had their places and they were living their purpose and they had their people, and people's lives were getting smaller. And it was really largely in part of, or the cause of it was really this systems transformation had gone even further into this Medicaid model, and it just took more and more time, energy, and attention. So we started trying out other things and prototyping other things based upon Diamon's work with the roving listening, and also inspired by our friend Erwin Waringa from the Netherlands, and he had done some stuff called Walk the Talk, which gave us some inspiration as well. And we started trying to pull together some stuff where we could put new practices in the day-to-day life of the people who work here and the people that they work for that will help people get connected or reconnected in their communities. And basically, for those of you who didn't get a chance to see the video and who weren't here on the 12th, a very brief summary of that is that we would walk neighborhoods with Kim, who you'll meet, her role as an advisor, with the advisors who support people in their teams, and walk the neighborhoods where people live and find the gifts in the neighborhoods and just see who's there, what they're interested in, what the stores are, who's out in their backyard, who's working over here in a garden, who's walking down the street, and just really walk the neighborhoods and get to find all the gifts in the neighborhoods. We took away all outcomes being placed upon advisors about having this impact the people that they work for. And we said to the advisors, we just want you to build your own social capital. We just want you to meet people, to take names and find out what the gifts are. And one of the things we found is that people, because they were walking the neighborhoods and actually doing this with us and reflecting on it with us, that they were embodying the experience. And there was something in the doing it that made such a tremendous difference, as opposed to just hearing about what we wanted to do. We figured out a more organized way to invest in people, both staff and the people we work for, in giving them small grants to pursue projects of interest that would make a difference in the community of the person they work for or in their own community. And people came up with some really interesting ideas, and we can give some more examples of those later. And we created a pattern that over the past 2.5 years happens both regularly on the neighborhood level, and then on a bigger advisor team level happens every couple of months, where we walk neighborhoods together in small groups, and then we come together, we share the stories with pictures, we reflect on the learning, and then we figure out what our next prototypes are going to be and what we're going to try next. So that kind of brings us to where we are today. And at this point, Diamond, you didn't interrupt me to say anything. Do you want to add to what I've said or say anything at this point?
Well, not really, just except just to talk about Neighbors as a civic engine. So in this country, where we think about just community as a whole, I thought it was important to not just think about culture, but because Neighbors is an institution in the state of New Jersey, we think about policy. And where policy started at, I think it was important that those behaviors around policy became different in that organization, which is, and then some of the places where they exist in cities started to influence civic policies about how they treat people, right? And the other thing is that Neighbors was affected by policy. So you heard that those changes forced them to take a stance about how they will determine what it means to be a good neighbor. And so they acted different. So I thought it was important that we take that out of how institutions can shift policy by changing their own internal behaviors and practices.
Great. Thank you. Diamond will share more later. And I don't know if we like really talked about where he's from, but he is from Indianapolis. I think of him as a community activator. He makes things happen. And he really, he runs an organization with his neighbors and his partners in Indianapolis called the Learning Tree. And it's some of the most brilliant stuff happening in a neighborhood that I've ever seen. So, okay, so that's our introduction. And at this point, Diamond and I want to turn the session over to Kim and Sandi. And they are going to take it from here. So Sandi or Kim, or who's ever going first.
That'd be me. That's me. So welcome everybody. Thanks for joining us today. So to kind of put in perspective where all this fits with me, Patti obviously is our leader here at Neighbors. She's the CEO of the organization. And when we started talking about all the pushing from the outside world and how it was affecting our work, and for those of you that are providing that support to people, that very intimate day-to-day support to people, I'm sure you find things that we also found, not just the pushing in from the changes going on in New Jersey around the transition into the Medicaid service, but also the changes in people's lives that happen for all of us, right? Somebody's life is getting smaller because they're getting older and things have changed for them. Somebody moved from one community to another one. It was like a starting over, plus they're a little bit older. Health things were coming up. So we were looking at this from lots of different places and finding how quickly losing a life, meaning losing the fabric of a life, can happen, right? Because all these things are pushing in. So one of the things that is unique to us, and it's deliberate, is that Patti takes the time to have these conversations with us. We did a deep dive into what do we look like as an organization, spent time thinking about that, talking to families, talking to people, bringing up stories, celebrating what's going great, but really looking deeply at each individual, everybody we support, and say, what can we do better? What can we do differently? What do you need from us? And that was part of the conversation as well. So I think it's just important that transparency, it just has to be there, and it has to be a part of your culture. And it is part of our culture. Also, something that a place that we work from is a place of a very strong foundation of caring. So if you're in this work, typically that's where people come from, right? We really care about the people that we work for. So we started with a nice, strong foundation around that, but we also had to have those pushes. And Patti knows we tease her about this a little bit, but it's sincere and it's needed. Patti has this beautiful place within her heart, and she knows just where to push people to make them uncomfortable. And we need to have that, right? You have to have a Patti in your life when you're doing this work, because if you can come from a nice, caring foundation with people, but you're pushed a little bit to the uncomfortable place, you see yourself a little bit differently, and you can see this work differently. And it helps you. I think it helped us, all of us. And Chrissy, who's on this call, is one of our advisors, and she works for Jeremy. She hates to speak publicly. And we just keep putting her in these things. It terrifies her. But we put her into this stuff because every time she has to take a little risk, it helps her grow. It supports Jeremy to grow and other teams that she's working for. So that little bit of uncomfortableness, that little push is really, really important. And sometimes it's a really big push to get people to a place where you can say, get out of your comfort zone, but you know what? You're safe in doing it. Because one of the things that Patti is very clear about, and that we believe within our organization and the way that we walk with people, sometimes trying something and it not going so well teaches us more than maybe something always going so perfectly. There's a lot of learning. As long as no one is getting hurt in the learning, it's really important to try that. So Patti used the word earlier, the prototyping that we do. We do a lot of things, and not everything is perfectly done, but we learn something every time, and it creates growth and another place to start and think about how we move forward. So Jeremy, we chose Jeremy today to come in and share his story for a couple reasons. First off, I think it speaks to our culture very well, as Jeremy's story. And Jeremy does a beautiful job in sharing his life with people. He's real comfortable sharing. So we wanted to have his voice in this conversation. And I met Jeremy many, many years ago. We were both much younger then. And I lost touch with him for a little bit. And then I found him again through a friend of ours. And Jeremy was looking to move into his own apartment. And we had a really open conversation, like we have with everyone, talking about, if you're going to make this move, what does that look like for you? And one of the things that was very clear for Jeremy and his family was that Jeremy wanted to come back home. He wanted to come back into his home community because he wasn't currently living there, and he was becoming a little bit isolated. His life was getting pretty small. So that was the first place for us to start, is get Jeremy home. And we got Jeremy home, and he started to connect with some things within his neighborhood, which are beautiful. He was connected to his firehouse in Holland and his church. He's like the mayor in town. He knows everybody, and everybody knows Jeremy. And his life is beautiful. It looked very beautiful. But when we were talking with Jeremy, there were some things in his life that he wanted. He wanted deeper relationships with people. He wanted to explore some different things. So our work with Jeremy, as we've moved through this process with Diamond and Patti, is something that Chrissy and those guys will talk about, is their journey to help not only Jeremy have a good life, but have a deeper, richer life within the community that he's in, by using a lot of these practices that we've been, kind of trying out over the last little while. So what I see in Jeremy's life now is not that he just has a good life. Jeremy has a deep life. And he has some deep relationships in his community. And that's really the heart of what we're trying to do. It's not making somebody's life wider, it's making somebody's life deeper and having those relationships be deeper. So Chrissy and Jeremy and Clive are going to chat a little bit about that.
Well, hello, everybody. I'm the uncomfortable one. Pushing to my boundaries, I am. But no, I have to say that when I had the pleasure and the opportunity to join Patti and Damon and the other advisors and Sandi at the beginning of this journey, I just could not wrap my mind around it. Couldn't wrap my mind around it. What do you mean you're going to pay me to go out and do something that's not work? It's not on paper, it's not on the computer, it's not going to a meeting for all these other different things. So it took me a minute before the light bulb went out, because it's something that was so different for me. So I actually had the pleasure of walking some of this journey with Jeremy. Jeremy, you want to say hi?
Hello. How are you?
This is my friend Jeremy, and we've been working together now for about, what, 12 years?
12 years. I was gonna say maybe it's like 9, 8 years.
Okay, it could be.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's right. I actually wasn't working with you right from the beginning.
Yeah.
And I know that you coming back into Milford was such a big deal for you because you had been
Definitely.
out of town for a minute. So you
Yes.
want to share some of that and share your pictures, some pictures of your home?
Okay. Let's see the home. There we go. Well, that's me in front of my home at 14 Bridge Street, and as you can see inside, yep, me in the kitchen, and I guess that's got to be part of the other part of the kitchen too.
Yeah.
Let's see what else.
Why was it important for you to come back to Milford? Why was
Well,
it important for you to find a home in town?
because Milford is actually like that whole area is like my hometown area. I grew up in that area for, I couldn't tell you, ever since I was a kid.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and pretty much I know. I not only knew a lot of people from back then, but you know what? Even moving back, I got to meet even more people too. So that was even more of a blessed thing. Because I got connected with Ma D's, I got connected with other places like even more with the church. I was still connected with the church, but even more with the church. And I got back with Holland Fire Company, and I even got connected in the years to come with Del Val Fire Company through Megan Gold, who was another support person of mine.
Yeah.
And
so I think that because you were able to pick the community that you wanted to live in, right? That was
yes,
an opportunity that opened up your world again. And I think that's
definitely.
phenomenal. So going back to the church, I know that you're deep rooted in the Presbyterian Church in Milford.
Yes, I am. I'm actually a deacon there. I've helped with the food pantry also. And I've helped out with different fundraisers too. One of our biggest being the homegrown breakfast.
And that
Yep.
happens usually every fall, with the exception of, I think this year, obviously, but because of the pandemic,
Yeah, this year's going to be an interesting one.
Yeah.
But anyways, the homegrown breakfast, as you can see on the bottom right, that's one of the pictures. Me and a couple of other people, and then in the upper left is a whole gang of people.
Mhm.
That's with the blizzard bags. Yeah, the blizzard bags was for like people in need during the Christmas season.
That's
Yeah.
wonderful. And I know that you guys continue to do the food bank. And I know that I've had the pleasure of walking Milford with you. And I have been living in this town on and off my entire life.
True.
And you introduced me to more people. I mean, I thought I knew everybody, but because you had these deep rooted connections, because you're out there walking the walk and talking the talk, and you're just, you helped me facilitate being able to get more comfortable in my own skin. And I just think that it's amazing that you have the ability to just go do what you say you're going to do. I think it's brilliant in the fact that you allow me to be a part of your journey. And I think that we also know that
and like, for example, you got me involved in the Keelersville Club.
Yeah, we're going to touch base about that too, because we have all kinds of exciting journeys that we've done together. And Clive is also on the call with us, and he's one of the individuals that also work for Jeremy. But Jeremy's our friend.
Yes.
You know, do you want to talk about those relationships that we've been able to build over the last few years and how that's important to everyone?
Well, to tell you the truth, it's like not only are you are you guys my friends, but also you've also like not only you work for me, but also support people, but you're also my friend in the outside too, because you guys have included me in like different either family functions of yours, friends functions, and same with me too.
Yeah.
You know, I remember, I think it was maybe Jax's first birthday I was at
Yeah.
one of the Apgar's house.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yep.
that was a good one.
That was. And I know because you've been such a part of Milford on and off for, most of your life, you have such a connection with the Holland Firehouse. And I
Yes.
think that if you want to just expand on how that relationship has developed into
Okay.
different relationships that you've been able to form in the community.
And that's actually the picture, well, one of the past pictures of us actually at the Holland Fire Company in our photo, and in the back, second from the very left, right here is actually me, kind of with the beard somewhat in a way. But anyways, my mom actually was the one who actually got me involved in the Holland Fire Company, because when she was part of the auxiliary. Yeah, so that was actually a big way I got involved.
Right, but then you continued that relationship because of the relationships that you had built with the people,
Yes.
that your peers and stuff that were there. So that became an every Thursday night staple. We used to, I used to have the pleasure and opportunity to go with you on some of those Thursday journeys.
Some of them,
So, and then I know that we have the opportunity, not just at the Holland Fire Department, but also the Milford one, because
The Milford one,
you
too.
love volunteering, is something that's in your heart, you
Yes.
know. So that's something that you also have a passion for, and yep, there you are.
Okay, that's with the Del Val Fire Company right there.
Yeah,
And
and when we were doing the Holland Firehouse, we actually had the opportunity for, I think, what was her name? Linda,
Castana.
because you have a
Yeah.
passion for weather. That's your thing.
Yes. There you go.
And you want to tell
Yep.
us a little bit about that? And
Yes, actually, Jeremy Donaldson's Weather Center is my site on Facebook. You can find it in People, Places, Things. I pretty much do the next day's forecast for Milford. I have a weather word of the week and a weather trivia question of the week, and up to the minute weather alerts for pretty much Upper Bucks, Hunterdon, and I've also been now doing like even more counties too, like if Hunterdon and Upper Bucks are part of it,
I remember us walking around town, and I thought, oh, okay, we're going to expand on this. We're going to be doing some weather videos. Remember those days?
I remember.
And so that was like, yeah, didn't quite work out, but we wasn't your thing. But I thought, why not try something new? But we tried it. It was fun. We did it in different parts of town. But
and to tell you the truth, actually, yeah, I guess maybe the phone thing was a little hard at first, trying to think how to get the videos attached, the pictures attached from the phone. But believe it or not, I've actually been figuring it out a little bit more.
Okay. So again, it's something that we just tried, right? You know, we might not succeed all the way, but you keep trying. So that's what we do. And Patti, the next slide, I don't have it. There we are. And because of everything, because we had such a full life that was going on with you, and we tried to deepen some of those relationships, but then the pandemic kind of happened.
I know.
So I know that a lot of people are struggling during this time, and we had to get creative, right?
Yes,
So you called me back in about April, and how did that conversation go? Do you want to just say that you needed it? I'm thinking that you said something around the fact that I need something to do.
Yes, I did. Yeah, because at the time, I guess everybody thought it was good for me to be out of work at the time, even my mom. And the thing was, it was like I needed something to do, especially, and you had the idea like the club needed work actually redoing, because the thing was, it was closed because of the pandemic. And as you can see, the bathrooms got all redone. Even the kitchen got all redone and updated too. It's
Yes,
now non-smoking in there too, the place. Yeah, and that was one of the things, the ceiling tiles. I couldn't tell you how much, like, I guess coloring was on there from the smoke. Me, Clive, and Hugh, who's another person, a member there, actually redid the ceiling tiles.
yeah, and ironically enough, I had known Clive from the club, and I have the pleasure, or had the pleasure of being on the board
Yeah.
there. So I had the opportunity to be able to go and get creative in making sure that you had something to be able to do. And Clive, I kind of stole him from the club because I knew he was a bartender there, and he's a man of many talents. And I knew that he would fit well with Jeremy, I thought. So then that's how that introduction happened. And I think the fact that you took the time to be able to go over there and just share another part of yourself, even when things were so kind of just in a dark place for a lot of people. So you definitely brightened up things in the area. And you met a whole bunch of people. You're now a member there. We were just talking yesterday that you have the opportunity to be a voting member now.
Yes.
And after being a voting member, you can be on the board here in a couple of years. So I'm looking forward to those relationships continuing, because you've met, everybody knows your name. Clive, do you want to share something about your time there since we kind of started our journey with you at the Keelersville?
As far as the helping the remodeling and the landscaping,
everything, yeah, the whole experience, and we met every day, right?
Yeah.
Because Jeremy would call me first thing in the morning, and I'd have to pack up everything that I did. If I was working I had to go over there, let them in, set it up. It was a huge place, so everybody was able to be socially distanced, but that was a wonderful experience to share. We saw each other every day.
We accomplished an awful lot in there. I'll tell you, Jeremy really rose to the occasion, did some amazing stuff, and we sanded and repainted shelves and did landscaping, put in a new drop ceiling with the help of Hugh, as Jeremy mentioned. We cleaned everything, washed so many dishes, and everything you could imagine for a food service industry, we kind of handled. And
you know what, Clive, we might have to ask you to go back on mute, just because I think you and Jeremy are too close to each other, and it's I know you're distanced enough to be on separate computers to be physically distanced, but the feedback is painful.
Well, thanks for sharing, Clive. And Patti, the next slide, please. So then after things kind of lifted a little bit, you were able to, your relationship with the Holland and the Milford Firehouse. Jersey's, has kind of some restrictions for people as to what they're able to do as a volunteer person. And then you, with your connections with Megan, found a place across the river in Pennsylvania, right around the corner, that you want to share that, that story about how those connections came together at Delaware Valley.
Definitely. With Delaware Valley Fire Company, Megan had gotten me connected because her stepbrother Matt is one of the I think he's actually the deputy chief now, that I'm one of the deputy chiefs, and they happen to be stepbrother, stepsister, so that's how mainly I got connected with the fire company there, and then eventually, as time went forward, Eric Torby actually started picking me up. Actually, this is before Clive actually started going to the fire company.
And I know that we were talking with different people that we actually didn't even realize that you already currently had in your life, because you were missing a little bit of something when you were volunteering at other fire departments. So we had to continue to look to see, in order to fulfill that.
Okay. Yeah, I know what you're talking about, the weather center.
Well, the weather
station.
center, well, no, just the fact that you weren't able to participate in drills
Oh, yeah,
over
okay.
in New
Well, that's
Jersey.
something.
And that's what you were always saying, that you loved volunteering in Milford and Holland, but you were kind of missing that piece, that you couldn't go out on drills and things
Yeah.
like that. So that's how the conversation, right? You told us what you wanted and we had to go out there and find it.
True.
And here it was closer than we thought. So now you get to do what with Delaware Valley that you couldn't do and the other ones in New Jersey?
Yeah, not only the drills, but if I'm in the area, let's say, if I'm at the fire company or in the area, or if I'm with one of the guys, I get to go on calls too.
Mm-hmm.
At times. Yeah.
And we didn't even know that was going to be a possibility until we started going out there and asking those questions, right?
True.
And that's made a huge difference in your life and all the social capital that you've built just in those relationships that you've built within Delaware Valley.
Yep.
And the weather station, because he is such a phenomenal weatherman, they did try to set him up with a weather station right at Delaware Valley, but we're still working on that one. We need somebody who's a little bit more technically more savvy than we are.
Yeah, there was a lot of technical issues with that.
Mm-hmm.
We still have, I think, like getting it like actually digitally set up, like big time set up. I guess it just wasn't, it just kind of wasn't able to be because the technical, have the weather like the instrument center there actually, so we could tell what the temperature is and whatever else there is, like the rain, I guess, that fell.
Yeah, so we're still working on that journey, right?
True.
And I think, Patti, do we have another slide?
There, the only other slide is your video, which I'm going to play for you. I need to turn on my sound first, so just give me a second. And unless there's something else you guys were expecting that I messed up.
Well, I can either mention this either before the video, after the video, I guess, but also with the now I guess. Like one of the things I've helped out with, like one of the other fire companies, Milford Fire Company, is like each year we've had that the pig roast clam bake. I've helped out with that, which is one of their biggest fundraisers. Yeah.
That's great, Jeremy.
So I got to help out with that and other stuff as well. Well, some other stuff like their fundraiser stuff.
Cool.
Yeah.
I'm going to run your video if that's okay
cool.
with you.
Yep.
I think it's going to run. So what I want to say about this video, if y'all don't mind, is that Jeremy made this video with the support of Clive, who we had to unfortunately not hear as much from as we would have liked. It's a short video. It's 1 minute and 10 seconds, and it's really Jeremy's words about what he wants to say. And in looking at it, I was very touched. I think part of it is a thank you to Clive and to Chrissy and to the people who support him. And the other thing I will say about it is the guy at the end doesn't mention Jeremy's name, and who he is, I believe, is the guy at the club for whom Jeremy did the work this summer to transform their bathrooms. So here's the video.
That would be Hugh McGuire. Yep.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Hugh McGuire. I'm one of the directors over at the Killersville Club. We are a private club in Percy, Pennsylvania. I'd just like to take a second or so to thank one of our members for all his work and his efforts over the last couple months in helping us out with improving the club. If it wasn't for him, you know, we wouldn't have been able to complete some of the jobs we had. He showed a lot of dedication and support, and he was always there. And I'd like to thank him for that and recognize him.
And that is Jeremy's video that he made. All right. Back to you, Sandi. Thank you for the video, Jeremy.
Thank you. No problem. You're welcome.
And Clive, thank you for all the help with videoing. Oh yeah, just so we say it, Clive just does a great job. So as we're kind of getting ready to go into, and we're going to go into some breakout sessions. So Patti's going to set that up for us. We can just have some conversations. But I did want to come back to this conversation around the walking about and what it means to walk through the community with people on your own as in our roles as either the advisor or the executive director, whoever it is that's walking and kind of meeting people, right? One of the questions we asked the advisor group is, what did you think about it after you did it? Like, how did it make you feel? And at first it scared me to death when you asked me to do this because I couldn't see myself doing it. But then after practicing it and coming back and talking about it, folks felt accomplished. They felt that it was easier. And even admittedly saying, I think I was making it too hard in my mind, because really, you know, who thinks about getting paid to walk around and just meet people on the street? Well, we do. Actually, that's the biggest part of our work, is to meet people, to build relationships with people. That's what we do, right, in this work, if we're doing it from a really right and good place. So the walking around and doing that roving with Diamond gave people courage. There was a mentoring and demonstration because Diamond makes this all look so easy. We also found out it's not right for everybody. So really, when we're talking about the moving about and walking through the communities and building relationships and building social capital, we had to have conversations with people around, what are your gifts? What do you want to share? What are you comfortable sharing? What's your stretch? Using one of Linda's words that we often hear about. What's your stretch? How far can you get out there in that uncomfortable place and then make something happen from that place? Because you know you're protected and you have a group of people behind you that are cheering you on or are here to catch you. So we did that for quite a long time. We're still doing it. People are getting to know folks. They're getting more courageous about it. The people that we work for are getting more courageous and comfortable about it. And that journey with Jeremy from Holland Township Fire Company to Del Val Fire Company to Milford Fire Company, obviously there's a theme there about the fire company. And as Chrissy was explaining, in New Jersey, there's some real conflicts around rules around how people can participate. And Jeremy, one of the things he kept talking about is, I really want to do more. Like, he's a great volunteer, doing all the things around breakfast setup and pig roast and all that. That's all very, very important. But there was something missing for Jeremy in these experiences where Del Val Fire Company, through his resources and building all that social capital and using people who he knew to have conversations, he found another place that he really fit in. And man, did he learn some stuff. And I know, Jeremy, you pressed yourself. Like, I remember hearing the stories around even things that he was doing at the very beginning that he didn't think he could do. And just amazing what you've accomplished, because being a volunteer fireman is hard. I definitely couldn't do it. Credit to you and everybody that does it. It's very hard and it's intense and it requires a commitment that not everybody has. But it also helped Jeremy deepen his relationships. He has a lot of relationships, always has, but his relationships are becoming deeper, more purposeful, more meaningful. And that particular step really helped, I think. And along with the church, you're deepening those relationships at your church, becoming the deacon, one of the deacons there, and all that has really helped you, not just to be a member of the church who's coming in each week to sit and hear the sermon, but really being a part of the church and a part of the community. How you doing, Patti?
I am set. I found I could not make the breakout groups while I was sharing the screen. So Sandi, while she talked, I made the breakout groups and we're learning all kinds of stuff. Lisa Adams, a surprise to you. I made you a breakout group facilitator, which just means the facilitators in the group will hold the question that Sandy's going to put out there for you and make sure everybody has a chance to talk.
All right. And I thought Kim was doing the question, so
Oh, go ahead. Kim will put out there to you then.
I'm sorry.
So the question I guess we can use to take away is, you know, what did you take away from what you heard from Jeremy's story? Because a lot of times we hear different terminologies of the practices. And one of the things that stood out to me just now was, if anyone identified Megan, she leveraged her social capital. She leveraged her social capital. So if you were on our first call and we talked about some of the practices, now this is a time when we go into our breakout sessions to talk to us about the practices and anything that you want to learn. So each of us will be in our breakout rooms, and you can talk to us anything that we've shared today or that we shared from last time. Any question that you have, what are the practices and what stood out to you from the practices? So what we're going to do now is, from each breakout group, if we could share either in the chat box some of the things that you've harvested, or if one person from each group wants to share, or as many people from each group wants to share. I know in our group, I asked Leah if she could share from our group, because she is a natural community connector, community navigator. She said, I'm just a part of my community and this is what I do. So I would love for Leah to share that.
Okay, you said you may good tap on me.
I'm learning from Patti.
That's code for absolutely going to.
Our group was sharing definitely stories about how Jeremy's example and how the neighborhood model has how we also used it in each one of ours. And there was definitely community connectors and community navigators. Looks different, but it was similar in terms of the roles that everybody had in their groups. We also talked about really the fact that it's also difficult. I said, yeah, there's something living deeper, not wider. Is that the welcoming spaces that are there may not always be as deep as we want it to be, and it may be there are barriers to actually building those deeper relationships. But Kim, I think, shared there that as part of the practice that you did was that trying not to actually try so hard to keep creating those spaces, but actually just being celebrating on what you already do have and making those connections much deeper. And like you had mentioned, just kind of having a pajama party rather than always knocking on doors and trying so hard to build those. There's also, I think, please, Jen and other ones who were in my group, chime in if you can. I think, did I capture most of them there?
You did. And I think we could raise our hand in the chat box, if I'm correct, Linda. If anyone wants to share, they could just raise their hand in the chat feature.
And I just shared the fact that, there's also personally, I'm not working with the groups, as I said, formally. It's just me as a community resident. And one of the things is just when I walk in my community with my mom and see everybody, I say hello to everyone. And I think that is the start. It's just something simple as those kind of gestures that will start those connections, and how those same connections actually have been sustainable for me during COVID to actually continue to reach out to those individuals that were just hellos to suddenly, how can I help? And so that next step can happen in circumstances, but that first step has to happen first, right? That first initial, oh, that's who you are. You're just not a total stranger knocking on my door. I remember you walking, in that area. So again, it's that one little step. We also talked about the fact that it was okay to fail. We didn't say fail, but if something didn't turn out the way that you were hoping, there's always a lot of lessons learned from that that you can take away and continue to build from. So I'm going to stop talking now.
Thank you, Leah. You captured it very well. One of the things that I walked away from this with is how in different countries, different places, we're all doing some of the same work, but just calling it, different names. And what one of the people mentioned was that we have an intentionality. So we were really intentional. And I think that's one of the practices too. Like we really were intentional about this and coming back, charting it. So does anyone else want to share about that?
We had a nice conversation in our group, but I think, it goes back, just trying to put it all together. Things like, kind of Chrissy's role and, kind of the importance of, kind of having ways to open the door from the inside. So, you talked about, we talked about earlier roving and listening and, and that's sort of, is what I was saying in our conversation was that's, you have to be of a community, and not just in it. And so, and that takes time. So how do we make time for people to kind of do that, both if you're in a supporting role or if you're someone who's been, I mean, all of us have a disability if we're, kind of kept out, if we're, if we're not included in a place. And that happens to so many people in our community because the way of our culture has changed and keeps changing over time. So having someone who can open that door from the inside. I was talking about, somebody just posted that egg metaphor, I think Buddhist thing about life begins from the inside, applying force from the outside, life ends, and, applying force from the inside out, life begins. So it's, kind of having that third thing, that interest. So having somebody was talking about community gardens and in this case, the firehouse. So to be able to kind of find somebody who can help somebody kind of overcome maybe their inability to see someone's gift and to recognize that there was something there that somebody had to offer that was of value to everyone, and understand sort of the mutuality and reciprocity and the relationship and demonstrate it so that, so that the firehouse didn't keep losing out on opportunities, but now found that there's a much, there's things that they might not have seen that now they can see. And that's what I guess Jeremy brought. Jeremy brought the gifts, right? And he brought the value. So it's a question of having a way to open people's eyes to it. But yeah, so I don't know, Jack, you or Patrick or Sylvia or Taranji, anybody else want to add on to that? Yeah, so Patrick was saying, I was coming from a clinical background. I see clinicians acknowledging informally what they learn from clients all the time, but professionalism seems to inhibit deepening of relationships. Yep, so we've seen that before.
Can I just chime in on that one too? Because Jeremy starts with an intention of friendship. Like it's almost the starting place for the relationship that Jeremy starts with. If you're going to be there, we're going to become friends. That's kind of a starting place for Jeremy. And I think that has been illuminating and leading to so many things. And that the thing about Neighbours is that it's open to that. That it's not expected that if you're going to be employed that you will be a friend, but the idea that that's possible and it's open, I think that's a significant difference. But the real leadership is the strength of Jeremy's vision that that's what we will be, is where he starts from. So, and one of the people in our group talked about just when you have people coming into your home, just the importance of that kind of a relationship, because you're in this close space all the time. So, but I think the leadership on that really is Jeremy's. So.
Yeah, I think if we're going to have this conversation, we have to address power, right? And I think the struggle is And I think this the conversations we had a lot is that who is in the driver's seat, all the way down to his language, all the way down to our actions. And when we say friend and servant, you know, what does that mean? And so that's in a larger arena around the world. I think the word power has to be examined and ways that we're talking more about sharing.
Say before I get to our group, someone just put and used a phrase in the chat that I loved, and it's the unexpected teacher. The person that you're least expecting to teach is where the magic comes from. And also in the group where I was present, they used words like leadership, looking at, you know, where are you expecting the leadership to come? Leadership comes in unique and different ways, and how that's displayed in this scenario. Some of the ideals that came out of our group were, Jeremy, listen, he was a teacher. He had goals, and even in coming into the community that he wanted to live in, it wasn't, I just want to be in this familiar place, but he had a reason why. He had a purpose. He had some real goals attached to that. And the beautiful piece that our team pulled out was, and people listened. You know, very often we're hearing what people are saying, but you know, in various environments, that's not always listened to, and it's not always acted on. And so I thought this was a wonderful opportunity to see where Jeremy, he expressed his heart, what was important to him, and people listened, they heard him, and they helped him to facilitate the things that were important to him. The other key point that continued to get reiterated in our group was just this importance of social capital. Connections. I mean, it's priceless. You can't pay for those kind of connections, authentic, sincere, heartwarming connections. And so that is something that's key in these type of processes, and it was key in Jeremy's life. Another point that came out in our discussions was the trial and error. You try things, they don't work, you learn from them and move forward. Sometimes people look at mistakes and plans, and they don't work out the way you wanted them to, and they say, you know, they wear a lot of weight, a lot of guilt. But in these situations, you just learned from the experience and kept moving. And the rest of my team, if there's anything else that I'm leaving out that I'm not covering for you guys, feel free to jump in at any point.
I have a question for you, Lisa.
Yes, sir.
So when you talk about social capital and using social capital, whose social capital are you talking about, and how was it used? Like,
well, I think in a lot of different ways. Jeremy had social capital. He had relationships there, but not only did Jeremy have some relationships, the people that were connected to him, Clive, Chrissy, other people that were a part of his life, people that were a part of his team have social capital. In other words, they have relationships in the areas that might be of interest to him and might serve him well. So and connecting him with those other individuals that don't necessarily work on the team or not a part of the support system, but they have input, experience, or some knowledge in an area where he's very interested. And so connecting him with
influence.
Yep. Yes, influence.
Yeah.
Because one of the things, like you talk about kind of the policy or the prohibited, you know, his involvement in a certain way or this or that. I mean, one of the things that I find is that, you know, our communities, our organizations, or, you know, different things, sometimes there are structures and policies and things in place that are designed to exclude, right? So, and that's the whole question of power and how to sort of dismantle hierarchies and dismantle these power structures that, you know, and how to break into it when people don't see value and where they don't see what they're missing. So, you know, and that only happens, and you can only build the social capital if you're, you know, kind of spend a lot of time, you know, and you get, so, I mean, I guess it's hard work, you know, and that's the thing. And if you don't necessarily have, you know, some of the gifts that maybe Jeremy brings, you know, there's some folks, and I'm not talking about disability, you know, we're all disabled, you know, when we're not included, you know, so it's about, you know, how to help people become, you know, be recognized and be seen and be, you know, kind of be welcomed in terms of their contribution. You know, I see it with all our any community I'm working in, and any kind of interest or group or organization. So I hear you.
And Michael, that brings me to just the final thought. And I believe it was David Morley shared this in our group, and I thought it was very powerful. He says, people not even looking at, not trying to be political, not looking at red versus blue, but for me, exclusion versus inclusion is the big difference. That's the thing to think about. Whoever, whatever it is that we're looking at, is there inclusion versus exclusion? And so I think that was powerful, David.
Well, one of the things that we didn't really talk about, Neighbours really, the group there really worked hard about designing a measurement that is about community. So in that, Mike, when you talk about social capital, there were other intangible currencies that the group at Neighbours used. They use relational currency. They use trust. They use celebration, imagination. So those currencies we don't use in institutions. And I think in stories is the one and the most powerful one that Neighbours really get. And even I've been affected by their stories, and it's helped shift policy all the way in Indiana. So different states away. And so there are other intangible currencies that Neighbours use that are maybe in another session needs to be explored. What are those currencies? What currencies do we have as humans that aren't fiscal currencies?
That are not monetized, right? So I think Jeremy explained it best when he talked about Megan and Megan's stepbrother, and Jeremy wanting to do more in the fire volunteer wise. And so Megan leveraged her social capital, which the currency being relationship with her brother. And then Delaware Valley became a part of the story. And now he's actually able to do what he wants to do. So when we talk about leveraging social capital, we're talking about currency that is not monetized, but maybe relational in other ways, community-based. So I know we're about to close out. We have 4 minutes, and I don't know if I did this well by closing. We were going to do one round of words. We can't do that. So if you could have if you want to end with the closing word in the chat, you can begin to do that now. I just wanted to address, there was a question that was asked, like during COVID, how are we maintaining these practices? And so typically we meet in a conservatory at Patti's house, and we have hospitality, and that's one of our practices. But now we meet via Zoom as advisors. Some of the things that we did in this current season was to be more civically engaged. We were already civically engaged, but being more civically engaged. The agency itself did news blasts. They wrote a letter about everyone, all of Black Lives Matter. We did a voting via Zoom, voter education, voter registration. What's some of the things we did? We utilized Zoom in such a way where we've had birthday parties, we've had holiday celebrations. We've gone into the community spaces that have socially distanced events. So for example, there was a socially distanced Zumba class every Saturday at a park. There was a cherry blossom festival. We get into the cars and we roll through the cherry blossom festival. In Somerset, there was movies in the park where you were socially distanced. You pay $5, you bring your thing. So we just were still engaged, but we had to still search for it rather than searching for it by doing our roving listening. We had to go on the internet and see what was offered, and then we had to do creativity ourselves. So that's how we're maintaining during COVID, and that's some of the things that we're doing during COVID.
I'm sharing there's some patterns to what we do over time.
Deep gratitude to you, Jeremy, and Chrissy and Clive and Sandi and Kim and Patti and Diamond for sharing and leading us in this really important conversation that feels like it's not done. Thank you. Patti, if we connect about some of the things that you want to share, we'll follow up with a note to people, and I can send on the chat to everyone, along with a little bit of a couple questions about some feedback for your hosts today. And we're just really grateful that to have everyone share, and deep gratitude, Dave Hasbury, for you and Patti and the joint tech support on all of this. Anything else you want to say, Patti, as we close?
Yeah, just thank you for everyone being here. I had no idea we'd have so many people who were interested in what we're doing. We're excited about it, and anyone who wants to continue the conversation, just be in touch with us. We'll do another learning marketplace like this and continue on, or we're more than happy to have individual conversations with people. So thank you all.